Hello, I'm Christine Bixby. I'm a senior client partner on our global brand partnership team at Oracle Advertising, and I'm joined today by Jessica Padula, who's with Nespresso, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us about your role.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jessica Padula, as Christine said, and I am the VP of Marketing and the Head of Sustainability at Nespresso in the US, and have been there 8.5 years now.
Great. So let's just start with the brand Nespresso. I'm a big fan, and I actually upgraded to a machine when I discovered you have iced coffee options.
Yes.
My husband is a year-round iced coffee drinker.
I love that.
So that worked well for us. And I love making a latte in the morning. What is your favorite Nespresso?
Oh, I have a Melozio every day, which is sort of one of our standard mugs. Occasionally I'll make it a Melozio Boost, which is one of our functional coffees with a little bit of extra caffeine in it. And that's my morning cup. And then I usually go to the office and we have machines in every conference room. So I'm constantly making a variety of espressos, whatever our latest sort of limited edition is. And then I almost always do a cappuccino in the afternoon. We have an amazing B2B machine that sits in our office, and it's a cappuccino with the most milky, wonderful foam that's at the touch of a button. So it's great.
Amazing.
I'm very lucky.
That sounds amazing. Amazing day of coffee.
Exactly.
So Nespresso is owned by Nestlé, which is interesting in that it's a CPG company, but Nespresso has a history in D2C.
Yeah.
How are most of your sales generated today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a really unique position because we're sort of this like innovation hub almost within the broader Nestle environment. And we do operate fairly independently, which allows us to sort of consider the implications of being a D2C first brand. To answer your question, it differs whether you're looking at the machine category, which is the entry point, versus the coffee category. On the machine front, the majority of that category is absolutely purchased through retail and trade partners. So we have a variety in that space, whether it's Amazon, more digital competitor versus a Target. Both are significant in terms of acquisition of new customers through that machine channel. On the coffee side, it's inverted. Most of our volume, because we are D2C heritage brand and because we also don't offer our coffee in many trade and retail partners, including online, most of that is consumed through D2C, whether through our boutiques. We have a network of 38 boutiques in the country, or through our app, which is very convenient if you don't already use it, or our website.
Okay, so that's a lot of different channels to manage. So how do you guys manage those on? Do you must have a different strategy by channel, and then they kind of all have to come together as well.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the big things that I think we've learned over the years when we launched Amazon was how are you juggling and balancing your portfolio, and what is the right mix, knowing where consumers are actually buying things today. It's not always a D2C website or destination. But there's obviously a huge value in driving to D2C, and that we think of it, our bigger strategy is all roads lead to D2C. So if you're sort of spreading all of your, let's say, purchasing through all of these channels, what are we doing to then bring those people back to D2C? Because that's where we obviously get the most financial value, but also the most engagement and loyalty and love value. So it's a lot of subject matter experts in all of the various touch points and channels, but then all with that singular aligned strategy of, at the end of the day, we want you to be an Nespresso customer through us directly.
So the strategy to bring them all to the D2C, then you're kind of developing that one-to-one relationship with them. And I assume that's, plays into a strategy as well. Could you talk a little about your loyalty and your first-party data strategy? Yeah,
and it's interesting, right? Because when you're born as a D2C brand, as you mentioned, I think there's a different level. I don't know, D2C brands in today's day and age is just such an interesting space because we don't have that typical CPG mindset because we were born as the only brand who sort of sold coffee in a boutique environment. That didn't exist before we came into the picture, right? And so I think that sets a bar that then you are sort of keeping up with. From a D2C data standpoint, I mean, that's a huge blessing of being a D2C brand, right, is you do have that first party data. I've worked in other CPG roles where you don't have that and you're having to partner with retail partners, et cetera. And there's paths to that, I think, but our area of expertise, I think, is really in leveraging that data, that first-party data from both a CRM activation standpoint to drive that engagement and loyalty, and then also from a media activation standpoint. Similar goal, but more on a repeat purchase conversion driving basis. And it's the same data set at the end of the day, but how you leverage it and how you're really thoughtful and respectful. I mean, we live in a world where privacy and over-communication is the name of the game. And so how do we balance that? How do we be thoughtful about how many promotions we're sending you, how many times we're in your inbox, in your SMS feed, those sorts of things, knowing that you're kind of getting inundated by so many brands every day.
That makes a lot of sense. So you started to touch on this. There's a lot of discussion about the marketing funnel and is the funnel dead, or how are you reimagining the funnel, especially given you have so many kind of different avenues that are feeding into your funnel?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we sort of threw out the funnel too, in a way, and we created what we call our consumer experience loop, because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, you start with a machine purchase, but then you need to stay in this infinite circle of continuing to buy coffee, right, in order to be a really valuable customer for us. And I think that serves a role when you think about consumers jumping in and out or coming in at different moments and different levels of engagement with the brand. But where it did us a disservice as a marketing function within Nespresso in the US was it sort of forgets that you have to fill the top of the funnel, that marketing's, first and foremost role is to create the demand, and the simple visual of a really big open funnel and needing to feed it with people was sort of lost in throwing out the funnel, so to speak, right? And the moment I got back to with our team, our commercial team, saying, our job as marketers is to create the demand that make sure that's really full at the top. It should make all of the subsequent tasks, whether they're linear or not, which we know they're not, but it should make all those subsequent tasks of driving purchase intent, driving conversion, repeat purchase, it should make all of that easier, because I've jammed full all of these like ripe prospects in the top of the funnel. So I think it's a balance of both. I think it's fun to be provocative and say, throw it out. We kind of did, and realized that it left a gap in how you position the role of marketing in a broader organization. Yeah,
that's interesting. So in terms of your prospecting and filling the funnel strategy, what have you been doing overall? And then has that strategy changed recently as you add in different generations of consumers?
Yes. I mean, to some extent, our upper funnel media is a traditional mix in many ways, right? It's sort of everything you would consider your TV, your out of home, your print to some extent, and maybe the one that's dying still, but your digital, your social, all in that upper funnel just to drive that initial interest and engagement. And it's really about the creative that sits in that upper funnel. But to your point, we also know that your traditional modes of communication are probably not as effective anymore, because we're all inundated by our feeds, because people are consuming media differently. I always think about the Hulu example, and not to call out Hulu, but for years people would be like, oh, you see the same Hulu ad 5 times when you watch one show. And so how does that just shift your mindset as your own, the way you consume media today? And so we've sort of evolved and tried to get more sophisticated in terms of targeting and placement and creative, but also to think about what are the different formats where people are engaging with content more broadly, and how can our brand better fit into that content in meaningful ways? So we have a couple of case studies. I think gaming is a really interesting one, where gaming can feel very niche. The idea of advertising on Twitch felt very foreign to me as a coffee brand, but we figured out a way to tell a story that naturally connected to the world of gaming, fit Nespresso and coffee into it authentically, not just as an ad on top, but actually recognizing the consumer who was in the gaming space. And we're seeing it perform really well. So continuing to learn and iterate and do more of that.
I love that. And so gaming, where did you get that insight?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think our team, our media agency and our creative team was sort of saying, okay, we have to get more sophisticated. You can't just, not that it may be a bad way of saying it, but like spray and pray, right? It's you can't be everywhere. You're getting challenged on budgets as marketers more and more from an ROI perspective. I think the CMO's role is managing the CFO in many ways. And so how do you get more sophisticated and get more like real-time turnkey data that can fuel investment in the upper funnel? And it was sort of an idea born out of that, and looking at Gen Z in a much more nuanced way than I think your broader, here's who they are, here's what they consume in coffee, and here's like where they live, right? Like that doesn't teach you a lot about their mindset and what they care about and why they might then care about coffee.
Okay, I love that. One thing you also said, the way you showed up in gaming, so it was more about the experience. Can you talk a little bit about your strategy around experiences as a form of advertising?
Yes, I think that's really core to what coffee is. If you think about coffee is primarily consumed among people together. It's a connector. It's a natural sort of like community builder. You think about the way Starbucks built their success. It was this third place. It was go and have a coffee and be in a space where you kind of are sharing something with people. And so, especially post-pandemic, there was such an appetite we were seeing among consumers broadly, but certainly our consumers, to re-engage in real life. And so we quickly tried to lean into that and say, when, where, and how does it make sense for the brand to either create custom experiences or show up in existing cultural moments and experiences in a natural way? And that's been a game changer, because I think that's, again, what consumers are looking for, but also really natural and inherent to our category and our brand in particular.
So then it's we started with CPG, and you're so far from a CPG, right? Even though you may be defined as that category. Can you talk a little bit about your first party strategy? So are you, with third party cookies going away, are you guys focusing much more on your valuable CRM? Are you studying that data? Are you looking at it in different ways to help gather insights, gather ideas for targeting and experiences?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we would be irresponsible if we weren't, right? To some extent, we have millions of people in our active database, and they've trusted us to share information about themselves. And so how can we cultivate that by providing meaningful value back, whether that's customized recommendations and even asking them questions. I think sometimes we undervalue how much consumers want to feel a part of the brands that they really love. So our consumers love to tell us, whether it's on social media or through surveys, they love to tell us, bring back this flavor. I used to love it from 7 years ago. Or I really wish you had a travel mug that did this. Or here's how I consume my coffee. Which coffee is best, knowing I love an iced coffee in the afternoon, right? We have all that knowledge and ability. The technology we're still working through, right? How do you serve up something that's like hyper personalized at scale? Super, super hard. But I would say we're like on that journey to enrich the things we know about our existing consumers through, like I said, surveys and things like that. But then not just hold that data to ourselves, really meaningfully act on it to make that consumer feel more known by the brand. Because at the end of the day, that creates a bond and a love and a respect, quite honestly, for the role that they play in fueling our business and being a part of the brand.
I love that. So you're trying to create the connection. They have the connection with the coffee experience, but you're also furthering that connection with the one-to-one relationship you have.
It's so valuable and so unique, I think, to D2C.
Yeah, and so just going back to the Nestle part of it, does Nestle lean into you guys to learn from, kind of what you're doing and how they can take those to broader learnings? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, the global Nestle CMO has really focused on creativity and like sophisticated marketing capabilities building. And we're right there at that table sort of sharing. Not every brand may have the exact experience as us, because again, not all of the Nestle brands and businesses have D2C as an opportunity, but how might you then parlay or transition or capture that even in a third-party world or in a partnership world, right, where you're leaning on different partners to bring that data about your customer, whether through, grocery shopping data, what's in the basket, things like that. These are all things you can find even if you don't have that first-party data.
Right. Love that. So last question, something more fun. Can you tell us about a campaign that you did recently that you're just really proud of and, was a fun experience?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So last year was a big year of innovation for us. We launched 3 new machines, but the one that's sort of really our Gen Z focused mass appeal machine was what we call Virtual Pop. And it's in a series of really bright, beautiful, vibrant colors. It's also our smallest footprint machine and the lowest price point machine that we offer, meaning it's going to be broadly appealing. So you could launch that and just let it roll on its colors and its price point. Those were going to be wins, we knew, from an innovation standpoint. But we also, going back to that piece of experiential and what our brand hopes to create, this more meaningful connection that's in our DNA, we took over. Well, the concept was that great coffee can now fit anywhere thanks to this machine. You never thought it possible to be able to have amazing coffee. And so we said, how do you get people to believe that? Well, bring the machine and coffee to unexpected places where you might never have thought you could have coffee. So we've taken over a couple of different unique places. One was the Ferris wheel in Santa Monica, but even more recently we took over One World Trade Center in the elevator. We actually created an iced coffee cafe inside the elevator. So while you're riding up the elevator to work in the morning, we can serve you an iced coffee right there in the elevator. And it was beautifully designed to match the machine. Super fun way, I think, just to stop people in their tracks. Got a lot of PR attention and buzz because, again, it's different, it's breakthrough, but it has a meaningful reason. We're not just in an elevator just because. It's because, amazingly, this machine can bring great coffee into unexpected places.
I love that. I think there's a future business in that.
Yeah, something.
Especially in the world.
I think people would love it if we could operationalize that at scale.
That's wonderful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciated talking and learning from you today.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right.